So as the representative ultra-majority action figure, I realize I stand between you and alcohol. So as King Henry VIII said to his many wives, I promise I won't keep you long. May I be the only speaker in your life to start his keynote off with a naked picture of myself as a child. 1, 10. Started playing piano at 10 years old. That is an actual lizard in case anyone notices. You know. He guided me. 21, big fish in a small pond, Binghamton University. Had aspirations. Classically trained, jazz trained, standards trained for a decade. I wanted to be John Williams. So I was a typical college junior. Fascinating story about Binghamton. It was the first university in the country with its own Taco Bell. Got me through the late nights. So John Williams was my raison d'etre. Is that how you pronounce it? Whatever, French. I wanted to be a composer for Hollywood. I applied to grad school in the fall of 1994 to get into USC Film School to study with Jerry Goldsmith, the late Jerry Goldsmith, who puts John Williams to shame from a film composition historical perspective. And I got accepted to USC Film School, one of 17 kids to start in the September of '96 after I would graduate. But what wound up happening next, man plans and God laughs. During the summer of 1995, I was interning on the 68th floor of Tower 2 for Dean Witter Reynolds. And remember that company? God knows where they went. And I started to have these really strange headaches. I didn't know what it was, and I just assumed that because the elevators, for anyone who had the privilege of ever going in those towers, the elevators were powered by the flux capacitor from Back to the Future, so they really gave you a little bit of vertigo, and you chalk things up to whatever, I'm 21, whatever. So I got back to school, and I noticed immediately that I had trouble arpeggiating. My left hand, for no reason, just had trouble. Simple fine motor was missing, which was also a problem because I'm a lefty, so I couldn't write. I'm a geek, and I couldn't type, and that was my actual laptop in 1995, thank you. But I was a musician, and I couldn't play. So I went to Campus Medical Center, and I said, I have this, I didn't know what the word bilateral meant or unilateral meant. This hand's not working, what do I do? And they gave me, if anyone can guess, right, Robitussin. My column with U.S. News and World Report is called Robitussin for Brain Cancer, so I encourage you to read along my narrative there. Didn't help, in case you were wondering, for that sec. I went misdiagnosed the entire semester from August to December with everything but what I actually had. And you would think, well, you shouldn't really think, we would assume or presume that when the 21-year-old keeps coming back, there's probably something a little more wrong with him than you're presuming. So it was only until the end of the semester I was producing Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. I was doing orchestrations and film composition and doing theater performances. I music directed about 14 musicals in the 8 semesters. And I started throwing up, my speech got slurred, and then I finally went to my doctor at home during Thanksgiving break, and he's like, you really need help. So long story short, I had this done on December 27th. By the way, where is Stephen Keating? We're having a brain cancer off right now. Your slides were cooler than mine, I can tell you. I had this golf ball in my brain. I needed surgery the next day, but they couldn't. They had to wait. My surgery date actually was the day of the storm of the century, on January 9th, 1996. So it was moved to the next day, and the Army helped just get to the hospital, which was nice. But my survival rates to survive the surgery, which thankfully they told me after the surgery, were 25%, let alone getting whatever's out me. This is kind of what it felt like, if I really think about going in my head with an ice cream scoop. It wasn't as elegant as, and I was asleep. You had the pleasure of being awake and talking about your girlfriend. So my 2 questions were just so naive. It's like, I just want to play piano again. Will this work once you take it out? And where are all the people that aren't 90? So they didn't answer either question, by the way. I actually had to relearn everything. Today, like what Stephen went through is fascinating because it really shows progress in science, technology, research, communications. It's fabulous. I had a craniotomy They basically take a drill and they go in your head and they scoop things out. And then they hopefully sew things back together. My tumor was in my cerebellum, in the back of your brain here, which controls kind of all the autonomic stuff in your body, kidney function, breathing, things that, we kind of take for granted. But then they came back to me and they said, by the way, you've had this thing in your head your entire life. You were born with this tumor. And which means that, bam, I had this thing in my head. But who thinks to give an infant an MRI for no reason? It wasn't until I became ridiculously symptomatic. So I lost 110 pounds. I found it. But I lost 110 pounds in the 3 months because back in the 90s, which sucked thanks to MC Hammer's hot pants, maybe Vanilla Ice, there was no nutrition. There was no concept of you are a human being. We talked about the hospitality industry that cancer is becoming. Hospitals now having water fountains in the hall. They want to look like Canyon Ranch, and they want the patient experience because everything's Yelp for healthcare now. This was my nutrition therapy. Because I swear to you, they actually said, just go eat a bunch of ice cream to keep yourself from losing more weight, because I had hyperthyroidism from the radiation. And I had radiation back, like Fukushima, Chernobyl level radiation. They don't do that anymore, radiation. I still pick up paperclips radiation 20 years later. I did graduate on time, which was amazing that the school bent over backwards for me. And this is my actual discharge paper that I found in a Reebok pump shoebox to date myself as being 41 years old. Anyone remember Reebok pumps? All right, if you're over 30, you do, and you're lying. I have a quick chemo story because I want to finish up and play another song for you. But this speaks to the power of self-advocacy. We're not all born self-advocates, but you have to have a sense of your own body and a sense of who you want to be in your own mind. And for me, all I wanted to do was play piano again. And when I got home after surgery, it was 7 days in the hospital after surgery before radiation started a month later. It was the longest I'd ever gone, ever, not playing piano, 7 days. But I had spent the last 6 months not being able to play. So the first thing I did when I got home was to see if I could play. And what came out of me was that song I just performed for you. A much more simplified version of that song that I performed for you. And that song is called Simplicity, because it was kind of all I had to go on when my left hand was just getting back. But I had lost so much muscle memory that it took me 7 years to rehabilitate myself, to feel like I can be who I was before I was sick. But my chemo story is emblematic of all of this, of the power of ourselves to control our future. Because I sat down, and I was in pediatrics, by the way, because it was congenital. And these are doctors that do not talk to patients. They talk to the parents of patients. So they have this almost laughable gap in communication skills if the patient is able to speak back to them. So I'm in this room after graduation, after radiation, with the head of neuro-oncology and the head of pediatric radiation oncology at the hospital. And my parents are sitting here, and they're talking to my parents. And I'm right here at 22 years old, 22. And we want to give your son a year of chemotherapy just to be sure. What is chemotherapy? We forget how ignorant we are until we're immersed in the world of cancer. And bless you if you are ignorant to that world, because you should stay ignorant to that world. But I said, when am I going to die? Literally, words out of my mouth. When am I going to die? Because they didn't give me any sort of prognosis. And I had sort of reassigned myself after graduating that I would just live out the rest of my days with no knowing anything. And they said, you have a 50% chance to survive 5 years. This was in 1996. And then they said, we're going to give you this chemo. And I said, well, what does that kick that 50% up to? Anyone guess? 55. That's 3 extra months added to 5 years at still 55% chance to survive. I then said, can we get back to you? Took a day off. My dad's best friend, my uncle, is one of the leading genetic research scientists on Earth. And he took a look at this cocktail of chemotherapies that they wanted to give me, and he noticed that one of them was called vincristine, which gives you, as a potentially long-term lasting side effect, what they call peripheral neuropathy. It happens in the elderly. It's when the nerves in your fingers and toes and your extremities start to decay, and you lose fine motor skill, which is what I had finally gotten back after surgery. So I went back the next day or next 2 days, and I looked at them again. I'm talking to them, they're my parents. And I said, I am declining chemotherapy. And they went, holy shit, what's wrong with you? We're trying to save your life. And I said, I would rather die in 5 years without vincristine if I knew that I had the chance to play this again one day than die in 5 years and 3 months without the chance of doing this again. And they looked at me again and said, we're trying to save your life. And then that happened. And that was my last day as a cancer patient. And that was 20 years ago. I still had a bucket list, though, because now I have 50% chance to live for 5 years. What do you do with that when you're 22 years old? And I said, it was more like the fuck-it list, but the bucket list. Well, I had lost so much weight, I had no muscle mass left, and I just said, I'm going to hike the Grand Canyon. My friend was moving to LA. We decided to meet up in Vegas, and we're going to hike the Grand Canyon. Doctors were like, you can't possibly do this. You're in such frail shape. I was malnourished. I had nothing. And I was like almost shell-shocked, psychologically, too. Talk about mental health issues with that. But I did it, and that's a real picture of me standing on a ledge that we got some tourists to take that thankfully didn't steal my camera. But what comes down to what is next? What happens to you after your traumatic experience? And this is shared across a lot of the stories, not all the stories, I've heard today at this incredibly inspiring event. So what happened next for me is that it ain't over when it's over. We all understand post-traumatic stress. I won't get into the details, but the biggest factor for me was I didn't know that there was any other human on earth that had cancer who wasn't 8 or 80. And that was unfair to me to not be told that. So my dad's like, get off my couch. You're going to live somehow. Get a job. I did. I spent a decade in the advertising agency world, learning branding, going back to my tech roots, taking computers apart when I was 5 years old. And I came out of the cancer closet. It took me a year and a half to realize that it was okay to be me. And I threw my first piano concert. And it was rudimentary from my own crazy standards of excellence performing. But 150 people came to just hear me play. And most of them didn't know I had cancer. So it was one of the most emotional days of my life, October 17th, 97, to expose myself in that way. But that day defined me because it gave me permission to own what happened to me and inspired me to rehabilitate myself even faster with a full-time job. And in 1999, I released 2 consecutive albums of 42 tracks of original piano music that I recorded over the course of 2 weeks at a studio in Los Angeles. All music that I wrote because they told me I would never write music again. All music that I wrote by who I was inspired by in this journey. Children in the hospitals who were bald and dying. The parents of those children who were my age facing that crisis. What I went through fascinating isolation and how I felt life getting ripped out from under you. And then what do you do when you have no choice but to figure out what it means to live? I threw myself a second bar mitzvah at the age of 26. Of course, you're 13 when you're, never mind. Jew, maybe not ultra-majority, partial ultra-majority. Someone's laughing, okay. So, and this was a big deal because I gave an hour-long concert for 250 people at this event that I catered, and I just built it for myself because I made a lot of money in the pre.com days. I got married through this career. My wife lost her brother to cancer when he was 19 from New York sarcoma in 2003. I met her while he was sick. It was a fascinating sort of eHarmony of cancer people meeting and just making that happen. 15 years ago. I'm infertile, so we did in vitro, not covered by insurance. We wound up having twofer, which was nice. We planted two, we got two. And then they just keep growing and growing and growing and growing, and they just started kindergarten last week. So again, I'll be 20 years out. December 27th this year is my 20-year cancerversary, and it's fascinating to look back and see how far things have come and how much better it truly is for people that are sick today. Survival rates are up, quality of life is up, communities exist, social media, the web has transformed the human experience going through tragedy. And I look back at what I tried to do with this. All I wanted was to have a community that I didn't have. And how do we ensure that the next me has what I didn't have? Because what I didn't have still did not exist even 10 years after I was diagnosed. There's a lot of futzing and fuddling. After 8 long years, my organization, Stupid Cancer, is now the largest dominant charity in the world for anyone affected by cancer as a child, a college student, or up to the age of 40. And I look at innovation, I go to a lot of these events, and it's such a funny term these days that we use this term patient centricity in my universe, and it's just total bullshit because it comes from people who don't understand it that are saying it to sound like they know what they're talking about. And I'm tired of it. Innovation, patient centricity, they're words. They don't mean anything unless there's context to them and input from them and outcomes from them. It really just comes down to you do what needs to happen because you feel it needs to be, and if you didn't do it, no one else would. And again, Stupid Cancer, which was born in 2007, has spent 8 years solving problems that no one else even considered were problems or no one was willing to have the balls to take on. So I'm proud to say that we now have 3 major brands that are out there in the real world today helping millions of people every day. CancerCon is our annual conference in Denver. 700 people from around the world come for 3.5 days of epic. Stupid Cancer, the largest brand, destination event, social media. Instapeer is our brand new mobile app, which is transforming the healthcare landscape, and I say transforming within this lens of we make words up. But it truly is revolutionizing the idea of you're not alone on your mobile app for youth. And my humble brag, my only humble brag slide, is that we are truly reaching millions of people. And I wake up every day and I can't believe that it's become what it is. And I'm here with one of my board members, a 2-time testicular cancer survivor, and who's heading a product for Instapeer, one of my most inspiring friends and mentors, Dave here. And Dave is the reason I get up every day, because we were there for him. We were not there for him when we needed him, and now he understands how important we are, so the next him can benefit from what we do. I'm going to wrap up here with one more song, and I'm going to ask you to come along with me on this song. This song, from my second album, I wrote it, and it's special to me because it's the only song, the first song I ever wrote that had nothing to do with cancer. 0 to do with cancer. And it was such a freeing moment that I didn't realize I was writing it without having any sort of backstory. It just felt like writing it. It was the right thing to do. So I'd ask that we dim the lights and you guys kind of close your eyes and join me on this journey as I perform Wonder Drive. let anyone tell you you can't do anything.